left, right. Okay? Front of the heart. The easiest thing to look for is this diagonal sulcus right here. It's a little groove. That's where the coronary vessels themselves lie, and we cover it with that. Okay? But what that does is tells you, number one, that this is the front of the heart. Okay? Anything below that line is left. Anything above that line is right. Okay? This is the apex of the heart, or the point. That's the bottom of the left ventricle. Okay, this is all left here. This is the bottom of the left ventricle. The two upper chambers, the two atria or auricles here, are these little flat-like things right here. This is the left atrium over here, the right atrium over here. Okay? If we think about the way blood flows through the heart, the right side of the heart receives oxygen-poor blood that's coming back from the body. The left side of the heart receives oxygen-rich blood that's coming back from the lungs. Okay? So the blood circulates around the body, the cells pull out all the O2, dump off all their CO2, and then we need to bring that oxygen-poor blood back to the heart so we can pump it out to the lungs. It comes back through the heart, if I can get in here, through the largest vein in the body. This is the back of the heart now. Okay? This is the back of the heart. It comes, that oxygen-poor blood comes back to the heart through the largest vein in the body, which is the vena cava. There is the inferior vena cava, which is bringing all that oxygen-poor blood back from the legs and the trunk, and there's the superior vena cava, which is draining the head and the upper body. Okay? So all that oxygen-poor blood comes back through that huge artery and dumps right in here. Dumps right into the right atrium. Okay? That right atrium contracts and sends it to the right ventricle, which is here. That right ventricle contracts. Now we got to get that blood out to the lungs. So that blood is going to go out through this vessel right here. Whoops, this vessel right here, which kind of lies across the top of the heart like this. And we know that arteries carry blood away from the heart, veins bring blood to the heart. So this is the pulmonary artery. Okay, this is going to carry that oxygen-poor blood out. This thing will split, so you have one major artery going to each lung. So all that oxygen-poor blood goes out there. Gas exchange happens in the lung. Now we've got to bring that oxygen-rich blood back to the heart so we can pump it around the body. It comes back through the heart through 4 major pulmonary veins. There's 2 from each lung that come in, and if this were cut properly, you could see 4 little openings here. But they all come back in, and they all dump into the left atrium. The left atrium contracts, sends it to the left ventricle. That left ventricle contracts and sends that blood out through the largest artery in the body, which is the aorta. Okay? This right here is actually the first branch off the aorta. This is the brachiocephalic artery, and that's going to branch off, and that's for the upper body. The aorta continues, comes up like this, makes a big arch, and there's vessels coming off the arch that go up to the head, and then it comes and it goes right down behind the heart, follows the spine all along the body, and it branches off all along to feed all the organ systems. Okay? So again, this is the superior vena cava, this is the inferior vena cava. Okay? This is the pulmonary artery here. Okay? These are the pulmonary veins coming back here. This is the aorta. This is the brachiocephalic. Okay? All right. Another thing they always ask you about is coronary sinus, which is right here. A sinus is just like a depression. That's right there, right in the area where that inferior vena cava comes in. It's just, that's where it is. Yep. Okay, if we look inside the heart, let's see, a good one here. Let's use this one. If you look inside the heart, again, that apex is the bottom of the left ventricle, so this is all left, right? And this is the right. And you see how much bigger the left is? The only muscle that you can really discern in these hearts is myocardium. It talks about different layers, but you can't see that. So this is all myocardium muscle. You see how muscular this side is compared to this one. Okay? So if they put a pin here, 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 you just say myocardium. The other thing they talk about in your lab book is the septum, which is just the tissue that separates right and left halves, and you can't really discern that either from these. Okay? So if we look, this is what, well, this is really crunchy. This is what's left of the right atrium. And if you look inside the, you can't open this one either. All right. Well, if you can kind of
Is that the left atrium or the?
This is the right atrium. if you look, kind of look in here, you can see that it's all bumpy in there. There's all ridges of muscle in there because they have to contract too, so they're muscular. That's called the pectinate muscle on the walls of the atria. And if you look down in here, there are valves that regulate flow going into the heart, and there are valves that regulate flow coming out of the heart. The valves that regulate flow between the atria and the ventricles, blood coming in, are cuspid valves. A cusp is just a flap of tissue. On the right side, it's a tricuspid valve, or a three-part valve. So if we look in here, we don't have too much of it left, actually. Actually, we hardly have any of it left in here. Let's see if we got any on this one. The right side on this one. Okay. This is actually a flap of tissue here. Okay, right here. That's one of the cusps. There are two others. There should be one on this wall, and then there would be one on the other piece of the heart that's been removed. In any case, this is a cusp, or flap of tissue. And you see these little strings that are anchoring it? Those are called the chordae tendineae, or the little tendons. And those themselves are anchored to these little bumps on the wall here. Those are papillary muscles. So what happens is when the heart contracts, it puts tension on those tendons, those tendineae, it pulls them, and that closes the valve. When the heart relaxes, the tension is released and the valve is opened. Okay? So again, there's a tricuspid valve, a three-part valve on the right side, chordae tendineae, papillary muscles, bumps on the walls here. Okay? The other thing you're going to notice in the right ventricle of the sheep heart is this thing here that looks like a big rubber band.
Mm-hmm.
That's called the moderator band. It moderates how much the heart contracts and expands. We don't have that. Sheep have that and cows have that. Okay? If we go to the left side, again, this is what's left of the left atrium up here. But if you looked in the walls of that, you'd also see the pectinate muscle on the wall of that. So this right here, actually this isn't a bad shot. On the left side, it's a bicuspid valve, and this is actually one half. Bi meaning two parts. This is one half of the valve. The other one would be on the half that's been removed. Okay, so it's the cusp. Again, here's the chordae tendineae, and they are anchored to the papillary, the bumps here on the wall, the papillary muscle. And if we open this down here, you see all these big ridges of muscle down here in the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the trabeculae carnae muscles. This side has to be really, really muscular to contract with enough force. Okay? The valves that regulate flow out of the heart. Once this left ventricle contracts, it's going to send blood out through that big artery called the aorta. Okay? And there's a valve that regulates that. And this one's a really nice one. It's right here. The valves regulating flow out of the heart are called semilunar valves. And you have part of it on this side, it's right here, this flap, and part of it on this side, it's this flap. And they just do that, just like that. They open and they close. Open and close. Okay? So that is the aortic semilunar valve, or the mitral valve. Okay? And the valve, once that right side contracts, it has to send it out through this pulmonary artery. Right? This is the front of the heart, the pulmonary artery. And if we open this up, it's easier to see it this way. It's right here. This is the pulmonary semilunar valve. Right there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Also in your lab book, it talks about the different layers on the wall of the aorta. Clearly, we're not going to see that either, so don't worry about it. This is all crunchy here. You can't discern anything from that. Our membranes are gone, but in the body, the heart is in its own little sac, its own little membrane sac called the pericardium, and that's attached to the body wall, and that helps keep your heart from bouncing around off your ribs. And it's filled with fluid, which acts as a nice bumper, a little cushion for the heart. Okay? In utero, there is no need to send blood to the lungs to be oxygenated. Right? You don't use your lungs in utero. All that oxygen-rich blood comes in from the placenta, from the maternal circulation. So we can bypass the lungs in utero. Since the blood's already oxygenated coming in from mom, we can send it, the right side of the heart's going to contract, but instead of sending it out to the lungs, it's going to go through this little connection right here called the ligamentum arteriosum. And that's a direct connection between the pulmonary artery and the aorta. So if we don't have to oxygenate the blood, it's already oxygen rich, we're just going to send it right back out around the body. And then as you develop in utero, this closes off. So that by the time you're born, you don't have any connection between your oxygen rich and oxygen poor circuits. Okay? Sometimes in preemies, they're born and this is still open. So they keep them in the NICU and watch them and let them, come to gestational age, and it usually closes off by itself, and if not, they go on and close it off. Okay? I think you're good.